The city lights shimmered against the dark rain, blurring through the windshield like melting stars. Lily sat in the back seat of the cab, fingers trembling on her phone screen. Her reflection, fragile, mascara running, stared back from the window. She wasn't running away from love. She was running from the ruins of it. Behind her, the echo of a man's voice still lingered, the same one that once made her believe forever was real. The driver glanced at her in the mirror. "Rough night?" he asked softly. She forced a smile. "Something like that." Outside, New York pulsed, alive, uncaring, unstoppable. Her heart, however, was not. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." The cab stopped in front of a tall glass building, Hawthorne and Vale Enterprises. The letters gleamed gold against the storm. Lily hesitated before stepping out, umbrella trembling in her hand. She'd left everything behind, her comfort, her past, her trust, to start over as a junior designer here. Inside, the lobby smelled like cedar and rain. The receptionist smiled. "First day?" Lily nodded, trying to hide her nerves. Her heels clicked softly against marble as she approached the elevator. Somewhere above those mirrored doors, the man who signed her offer letter, Michael Vale, ruled the empire. She had no idea she was about to meet him under the most impossible circumstances. That night, before dawn broke, she would see him not as a CEO, but as a stranger who would change everything. The story rewound 12 hours earlier. Lily had been at a friend's rooftop party, her first night in the city. Music throbbed in the distance, laughter rose around her, and yet she felt utterly alone. Her phone buzzed, a message from her ex. Just one line, "You'll never find better." She almost deleted it. Instead, she went downstairs for air. The street below glistened from recent rain, streetlights reflecting like broken glass. And there he was, leaning against a sleek car, sleeves rolled, watching the rain fall as if it were poetry. "Forgot your umbrella?" he asked when their eyes met. His voice was deep, calm, the kind that carried weight. She laughed nervously. "Forgot a lot of things tonight." He smiled. "Including your reason to smile, maybe." They ended up walking together, talking about everything and nothing. She never asked his name. Maybe because, for one fleeting night, anonymity felt safer than promises. When the thunder cracked, he took her hand and led her under an awning, his touch warm, steady. Then, without warning, he kissed her. It wasn't reckless. It wasn't lust. It was something in between, a moment that made her forget who she was and remember who she could be. She didn't stop him, but when lightning lit the sky, she pulled away, breathless, heart racing. "I shouldn't." He looked at her as if memorizing her face. "Then don't. Just remember this instead." Before she could reply, he stepped back into the storm and disappeared behind the blur of rain. Lily stood there, stunned, lips trembling with the ghost of a stranger's kiss. The next morning, she arrived early to her new office, still half dreaming, half dreading reality. She wanted to forget the wildness of last night, the kiss, the stranger, the way her heart still ached in its echo. But when the elevator doors opened and she stepped into the boardroom for her first presentation, he was there, Michael Vale, billionaire, CEO, and the man who had kissed her in the rain. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. His eyes widened just slightly, enough to tell her he remembered too. "Ms. Reed, isn't it?" he said evenly, his tone professional. "Welcome aboard." She swallowed hard, forcing composure. "Thank you, Mr. Vale." The air between them tightened, a silence that carried 1,000 unspoken words. And in that silence, something began that neither of them could stop. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Lily's pulse refused to steady as the meeting began. Michael's voice filled the room, composed, commanding, almost too calm for the storm that had exploded between them hours earlier. Every time his gaze brushed hers, her breath caught. She tried to focus on the slides glowing behind him, but her mind replayed rain and lightning, the warmth of his hand, the stolen moment that now hung like a secret between them. After the presentation, the team dispersed, and Michael spoke quietly. "Ms. Reed, stay back a moment." Her throat tightened. The door closed, leaving them alone. The soft hum of city traffic below mixed with the low buzz of electricity in the air. "I owe you an apology," he began, leaning against the table. His expression was unreadable. "Last night, I didn't know you worked here." "I didn't either," she admitted, voice trembling. "I thought you were just a stranger." She nodded. For a fleeting second, he almost smiled. "I suppose I was." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, fragile. Two souls who collided by accident and were now paying for it in heartbeats. He finally straightened. "Let's keep this professional." "Of course," she said quickly, though her voice cracked slightly. When she left the office, the world outside felt sharper, the rain colder, the air thinner. She told herself to move on, to bury that night under deadlines and designs. But every time she caught his reflection in the hallway glass, the memory surfaced, that wild, impossible connection neither could name nor escape. Days turned into weeks. Their paths crossed in small ways, a shared elevator, a late-night project, an unspoken glance that said too much. One evening, as the office emptied, Lily stayed late to finish mock-ups. Her computer flickered, and the lights dimmed, a storm brewing again outside. She heard footsteps behind her. Michael's voice came softly. "Still working?" She turned, startled. "Deadline tomorrow." He walked closer, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the same image from that night. But this time, his eyes carried something deeper. "You're talented," he said quietly. "You see things differently." "Maybe that's because I've lost enough to notice what's missing," she murmured. His gaze softened. "What did you lose?" Lily hesitated. "Someone who taught me that love can't be begged for." For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, in a low voice, "Maybe you just gave it to someone who couldn't carry it." Her heart clenched. How could he, a man wrapped in control and wealth, sound like he understood heartbreak so well? She wanted to ask. But instead, she smiled faintly. "You talk like someone who's been there." His eyes flickered with something unspoken. "Maybe I still am." The thunder outside roared, and in that brief flash of lightning, she saw it. The loneliness behind his strength. The silence stretched between them again, tender and dangerous all at once. Lily stood, gathering her things. "Good night, Mr. Vale." "Good night, Ms. Reed." But when she turned to leave, he spoke again, quieter this time. "Lily." She froze. It was the first time he'd said her name. "Thank you," he said simply, "for reminding me what honesty sounds like." She didn't look back. She couldn't, because something inside her, something long asleep, had just awakened. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes, and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. The next morning, whispers fluttered through the office. Rumors of a woman seen leaving the CEO's floor late at night. Lily heard them in passing. Quiet, cruel, twisting truth into scandal. By noon, her desk felt like a spotlight. She tried to focus on her sketches, but every laugh, every sideways glance sliced through her. And Michael, distant now, buried in meetings, unreachable. When she finally escaped to the stairwell to breathe, her phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Meet me downstairs. 10 minutes. It was him. She found him waiting by the side exit. No guards, no driver, just rain again, soft and steady. "I heard the rumors," he said, his jaw tense. "I'll handle it." "You can't," she whispered. "They'll think it's true." He looked at her then, deeply, painfully. "Do you care what they think?" She hesitated. "Maybe I should." "Or maybe," he said, stepping closer, "you care because something about it feels true." Her breath caught. "Michael." He stopped her with just his eyes. "I'm not asking for anything. I just can't pretend that night didn't happen." The thunder echoed again, soft, distant, like a warning. Lily felt tears sting her eyes. "Neither can I." "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives." Your story might light someone's path tonight. The rain had stopped by the time Lily returned home, but her heart hadn't. It kept pounding, too fast, too loud, as if afraid of what it had started to feel. She tossed a soaked jacket onto the chair and sank onto her couch, the city glowing faintly through her window blinds. Her hands trembled when she reached for her phone. There were no messages, no calls, just silence, the kind that follows when two people cross a line they can't uncross. She tried to lose herself in her work that weekend, yet every sketch she drew seemed to trace his outline, the slope of his shoulders, the quiet ache behind his eyes. It was ridiculous. He was her boss. He was off limits. And yet, the heart never learned from warnings. Monday came with cold coffee and coldest days. The gossip hadn't died. It had evolved. Every whisper felt like a knife. By afternoon, she hid in the archives room, pretending to look for design samples. She needed air, space, peace. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. The door opened behind her, and Michael stepped in, hiding again. She didn't turn. "I'm working." "You're terrible at lying." His voice softened. "They're just noise, Lily. Don't let them define you." She spun to face him. "That's easy for you to say. You don't get called names in the hallways." He exhaled, leaning against a shelf. "You think I don't get judged? Every decision I make ends up in the press. They build me up, tear me down, rebuild me again. I'm just better at pretending I don't hear it." Her anger cracked slightly. "And that works." "Most days," he said quietly, "until someone comes along who makes you want to stop pretending." She looked at him, really looked. The distance, the weight in his posture, the sadness he never showed. "Michael, what are you hiding?" He gave a half smile, one without joy. "A promise I broke." He didn't explain. He just left her with those words, and they followed her like a ghost. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the way he said promise, as if it was more than a word, as if it haunted him. By Wednesday, she found out why. An emergency meeting was called. The team gathered, tension thick in the air. Michael entered, expression hard. Behind him, a woman followed, poised, elegant, wearing grief-like armor. "Everyone," he began, voice steady. "This is Grace Hawthorne. She'll be overseeing the charity campaign moving forward." Whispers erupted. Hawthorne, as in Hawthorne and Vale. Grace smiled politely, but her eyes were cold when they met Lily's. And then it hit her, the look, the silence, the distance. Grace wasn't just a partner in business. She had been something more. After the meeting, Lily stayed behind. "You could have warned me," she said quietly. Michael rubbed his temples. "It's complicated." Complicated. Her voice cracked. "You kissed me. You made me believe." "I didn't mean to," he interrupted. "That night wasn't supposed to happen." Her heart splintered. "Then why does it still feel real?" He looked at her with something like pain, something almost close to regret. "Because it was." And just like that, he walked out, leaving her surrounded by silence again. Only this time, it hurt differently. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Days passed, colder now. Grace's presence was everywhere, in meetings, in hallways, in Michael's office. She spoke with grace, but her smile never reached her eyes. One afternoon, Lily overheard them talking through the half-open conference door. Grace's voice, low, sharp. "You think you can just erase what happened? You owe me, Michael." He didn't answer immediately. "I'm not erasing anything, Grace. I'm trying to fix what's left." "Fix," she scoffed. "You ruined both our lives the moment you walked away." Lily stepped back before they could see her, her chest tightening. The pieces began to fit together. The promise he broke, the guilt in his eyes, the reason he couldn't look at her the same way anymore. He wasn't just haunted by love. He was bound by it. That evening, she sent him one message. Simple, short. "You don't have to protect me from your past." He didn't reply. But at midnight, when the city was quiet, her phone buzzed with one unread text. "I'm not protecting you, Lily. I'm protecting you from me." Her tears came before she could stop them. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. The message stayed on her screen long after midnight, its words bleeding into the dark. I'm protecting you from me. Lily read it again and again, trying to make sense of a man who could hold her heart so gently and still push her away. The glow from her phone dimmed, but the ache inside her didn't. She finally fell asleep on the couch, his name still heavy on her lips. The next morning, the office felt colder, not because of the air conditioning, but because every time she saw him, it felt like standing at the edge of something dangerous. She told herself she'd focus, keep her head down, act like nothing had happened. But love doesn't listen to logic. Late that afternoon, while reviewing design drafts, she felt his shadow fall over her desk. Got a minute? He asked. Her pulse jumped. Of course. He led her to the rooftop terrace, away from curious eyes. The sky stretched gray, clouds swirling like smoke. I shouldn't have texted you last night, he began, voice low. It was selfish. She crossed her arms, trying to stay steady. You meant it, though, didn't you? He hesitated. Every word. Then don't apologize for honesty. He looked at her, really looked, as if searching for the courage to tell the truth. Grace and I, we were engaged once. She was my partner in everything. The company, the vision, the life I thought I wanted. Lily's breath caught. But then she changed, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Or maybe I did. We lost someone close, her sister, Ava. She blamed me. I blamed myself. The company became our way of pretending everything was fine. He ran a hand through his hair. That promise I broke was to her. I said I'd never walk away, no matter how much it hurt. And now, Lily whispered, now I'm learning that staying can hurt even more. The wind lifted a strand of her hair across her face. He reached to tuck it behind her ear, but stopped halfway, his hand trembling. The distance between them was unbearable. Michael, she said softly, you can't keep saving everyone. You'll drown. He let out a shaky laugh. Maybe drowning's easier than choosing who to save. She felt tears prick her eyes. You're not a bad man. You're just lost. He looked down, his jaw tightening. And you're the first person who ever said that without hating me for it. For a moment, they stood there, caught between what they felt and what they feared. Then the door opened behind them. Grace stepped out, heels sharp against the concrete. I figured I'd find you here, she said coolly, her gaze cutting between them. Should I come back later, or are you two done discussing business? Lily froze. Michael straightened instantly. Grace. No, she interrupted. Don't bother. Her tone was calm, but her eyes blazed. You break one promise, Michael, and you build another lie on top of it. Without another word, she turned and left, the echo of her heels fading like thunder. Lily stood there, stunned. She knows. She's always known, he whispered. The silence that followed was heavy, not with anger, but sorrow. That night, Lily sat by her window watching rain trickle down the glass. She thought about Grace, about Ava, about the weight Michael carried. For the first time, she realized his loneliness wasn't just guilt. It was grief. She typed a message but didn't send it. You don't have to face it alone. She deleted it instead. Because sometimes, love means stepping back before you break someone twice. The next day, she handed in her resignation letter. Michael found it on his desk hours later, his chest tightening as he read the words. I came here to rebuild my life, not to complicate yours. Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists, even when it hurts. He stared at the paper until the letters blurred. For a man who'd built empires, he'd never felt so helpless. He left the office early that night, and when he reached the empty street, he looked up and saw her. Lily stood by the crosswalk, suitcase in hand, waiting for a cab. Her face looked peaceful, but her eyes shimmered with sadness. He crossed the road without thinking. Lily! She turned. Neither spoke for a moment, just two souls caught in the space between goodbye and forever. Don't go, he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. I have to, she replied. You need to fix what's broken, and I need to find what's missing. Rain began to fall again, softly, almost tenderly. He reached for her hand. What if I can't fix it? Then learn to forgive yourself, she said gently. Start there. He let her go, even when every instinct screamed not to. Because love, he realized, wasn't always about holding on. If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. The cab doors shut, and the sound felt like the end of a chapter neither of them wanted to finish. Michael stood there, soaked beneath the city's weeping sky, watching the red taillights disappear into the mist. For a long time, he didn't move. He couldn't. His world, all the meetings, money, and marble, suddenly felt painfully empty. Inside the cab, Lily pressed her forehead against the glass, the rain tracing invisible paths down her reflection. She whispered to herself, "Don't look back." But her heart didn't listen. It stayed there with him, at that lonely corner, in that final silence. Weeks passed. The office adjusted without her, but Michael didn't. Her name lingered in every undone sentence, every design she'd left behind. He buried himself in work, convincing himself she was just another chapter, until the universe reminded him that some stories refuse to end. It happened on a Thursday. A meeting with Grace had just ended in another argument. Sharp words, sharper truths. "You can't keep hiding behind guilt, Michael," she'd said, throwing her papers onto the table. "You lost Ava. We both did. But you can't keep punishing yourself by chasing ghosts." He had looked at her, exhausted. "Maybe that's all I know how to do." Grace softened slightly, her anger fading into something more human. "You don't have to be the villain in every story. Not even your own." That night, he couldn't sleep. So he drove. No destination, just movement. The city blurred by until he found himself parked outside a small art exhibit. The sign read, "Healing Through Color, Local Designer Showcase." Something pulled him inside. The walls were lined with paintings and concept boards, hope splashed in every shade. And there, in the far corner, was a design he recognized instantly. Soft, intricate, unmistakably her. At the bottom corner of the canvas, Lily Reed. The piece was titled Forgive the Rain. He stared at it, an abstract swirl of blues and silvers, like a storm learning to quiet itself. A small card beside it read, "Sometimes we meet people not to keep them, but to remember what healing looks like." He didn't realize he was crying until the gallery owner spoke. "You know her?" Michael nodded slowly. "I thought I did." "She's remarkable," the man said. "Moved upstate to teach art therapy. Said she wanted to help people find color again." Michael smiled faintly. "Yeah, that sounds like her." He bought the piece that night and hung it in his office, not as decoration, but as a reminder. Some storms don't destroy, they cleanse. 2 months later, fate crossed their paths again. Lily was leading a small art therapy session at a community center when a quiet voice broke through the room. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" She looked up, and there he was. Her heart stuttered. "Michael." He smiled, softer than she remembered. "I was in the neighborhood." She laughed through a trembling breath. "You drove 2 hours for a neighborhood." He shrugged, pulling out a chair. "Maybe I got lost again." For a moment, they just looked at each other, the kind of silence that said everything words couldn't. After class, they walked by the lake behind the center. The evening light turned gold across the water, and for once, the world felt still. "I saw your exhibit," he said quietly. "Forgive the rain." Lily smiled. "Did it make sense?" "More than you think." He paused. "I'm trying to forgive myself. For her. For you. For everything I couldn't fix." She stopped walking. "And have you?" He looked out at the water, the reflection of the sunset flickering in his eyes. "Not yet, but I'm closer than I've ever been." Lily reached out, brushing her fingers against his. "Then that's enough." He turned to her. No tension now, no rush, just calm understanding. "You once told me I was lost," he said softly. "Maybe I just needed to be found by someone who wasn't trying to own me, just see me." Her smile was small but real. "And maybe I needed to learn that love doesn't always have to hurt to be real." For a long while, they stood in silence, the breeze carrying the faint scent of rain. The storm that had once brought them together now felt far away, not gone, but forgiven. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, I felt you. The sun dipped low behind the trees, setting the lake ablaze with molten light. Lily watched the shimmer of gold across the surface, listening to the gentle hum of the evening insects, the soft breath of the wind that carried Michael's quiet voice. I don't know what comes next, he said. For the first time, I'm not planning it. She smiled faintly. That's the beauty of it. Sometimes, the best things start when you stop trying to control them. He nodded, his gaze distant, thoughtful. All my life, I've built walls made of goals, routines, meetings. But when you're gone long enough inside them, you forget what light looks like. Lily looked at him carefully, her tone soft but honest. And what about Grace? The question hung between them like smoke. Michael sighed. I met with her last week. Told her I couldn't keep pretending we were still partners, in any sense. She didn't cry, didn't yell. Just said, it's about time you told the truth. And how did that feel? Like losing something and finding something better. Lily smiled gently. Freedom. Forgiveness, he said. They continued walking, gravel crunching beneath their shoes. The sky had turned a dusky violet now, the air tinged with the scent of coming rain, but it no longer felt ominous. For the first time, the storm felt like peace. At the door of the community center, they stopped. Neither wanted to break the moment. He looked at her. I'm not asking for a second chance, he said slowly. I just wanted you to know you changed me. Lily's eyes softened. Maybe we both changed each other. He reached out, his hand hovering near hers, not quite touching. If I ever see you again. She cut him off with a whisper. You will. And with that, she turned and walked into the building, her hair catching the golden light one last time. Michael stood there, rooted, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the urge to chase. Some endings, he realized, were just beginnings wearing different clothes. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The painting Forgive the Rain became a quiet symbol in his office, a daily reminder that even storms have purpose. Lily, meanwhile, found solace in teaching. Her students, veterans, single mothers, kids from broken homes, poured their emotions into colors. She'd watch them rediscover joy one brushstroke at a time, and sometimes she'd think of him, wondering if he ever found his peace. Then one winter morning, while setting up for class, she heard laughter outside, deep, familiar. She turned, and there he was again, standing by the door with a small box in his hands. You always show up when the season changes, she said, smiling. Maybe that's my timing, he replied, walking closer. I brought you something. He opened the box. Inside was a small silver pendant shaped like a raindrop, etched on the back. Some storms are worth remembering. Her eyes glistened. It's beautiful. I had it made after I bought your painting, he said. A reminder, not of what I lost, but what I learned. She fastened the pendant around her neck, the metal cool against the skin. And what did you learn, Mr. Vale? He met her gaze, the corners of his mouth lifting. That love isn't about ownership. It's about presence. Sometimes being there, even quietly, means more than forever. Her heart fluttered at the sincerity in his tone. You sound like one of my students, she teased softly. Maybe I finally started learning, he said. They laugh, not the nervous kind that hides pain, but the genuine kind that heals it. As they stood by the frost-lined window, snow began to fall, light, gentle, endless. Funny, she murmured, watching the flakes land on his coat. It's snowing, not raining. He looked outside, then back at her. Maybe the sky finally forgave us. She smiled, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. The snow kept falling, quietly rewriting their story, not as tragedy but as transformation. If this part made you breathe a little softer, comment still hey. Sometimes healing isn't loud. It's a quiet choice to stay kind after everything tried to harden you. The winter melted quietly into spring, and with it, the sharp edges of their past softened. Lily's small art center grew. More students came. More laughter filled the halls. She was busier than ever, yet there were moments, between brushstrokes and soft music, when she would glance at the pendant around her neck and feel warmth bloom inside her chest. Michael kept his distance, but his presence lingered like a melody that never quite fades. Once in a while, a donation arrived anonymously for the center. New paints, easels, supplies for the children. She never asked, but she always knew. One evening, after a long day of classes, Lily stepped outside to lock up. The air was cool, the sky blushing with the last light of sunset. She stood there a while, breathing in peace, until she heard it again. That voice. "Still working late, Ms. Reed?" She turned, and there he was, hands in pockets, a shy smile curving his lips. She laughed softly. "Some habits don't change." He walked closer. Maybe some shouldn't. They stood facing each other in the quiet glow of dusk. The world around them seemed to hush. Even the birds paused their song. "I wasn't sure if I should come," he admitted. "Didn't want to disturb whatever calm you found." "You didn't," she said gently. "You were part of what helped me find it." He looked down, emotion flickering across his face. "I keep thinking about that night. The rain, the kiss, all the chaos that followed. It feels like a lifetime ago." "It was," she whispered. "We were two people drowning in things we didn't understand." "And now?" he asked quietly. She smiled, small and sure. "Now we're learning to swim." He nodded, his expression softening. "You know, I went back to therapy. Grace encouraged it. Actually, said I needed to make peace with ghosts instead of living with them." "That's good," she said, her voice warm. "It's brave." He looked at her, and for a long time, neither of them spoke. There was no tension now, no guilt or regret. Just two hearts that had finally stopped running. "I wanted to thank you," he said finally, "for not hating me, for not letting my mistakes define us." Lily reached for his hand, her touch light. "I stopped hating pain the day I realized it taught me how to see beauty again." He squeezed her fingers gently. "And I stopped fearing love when I realized it could still exist without ownership." The silence that followed was full of understanding, forgiveness, peace. They walked together to the lake once more, the same place they had stood months ago when everything between them was breaking. Now, the water mirrored the golden sky, calm and endless. "Do you think," she asked softly, "that we were meant to meet that night?" He smiled faintly. "I think we were meant to break and build again differently." Lily nodded, tears brimming but not from sadness. "Then maybe that's what love really is. Not the fireworks, not the fairy tales. Just two people trying again, kinder this time." Michael's voice was barely a whisper, and never pretending again. She looked up at him. Never. As the last of the sunlight sank beneath the horizon, he took a slow breath. "Lily," he said, "if there's ever a moment you need me, you won't even have to call. I'll know." She smiled, tears spilling freely now. "You always did." He brushed one from her cheek, the gesture tender, final, not an ending, but a release. The air shimmered between them with quiet peace. They didn't need to kiss this time. Some love stories don't end in touch. They end in understanding. The sky turned from gold to violet, and somewhere deep inside both of them, something clicked back into place, the kind of healing that no words could name. If you've ever lost something that later returned in a better form, not the same, but true, comment it came back. Let's remind the world that sometimes what's meant for you won't arrive perfect. It'll arrive ready to grow. The weeks that followed felt like a soft, unfinished melody, one that didn't need to resolve to feel complete. Lily and Michael didn't rush to define what they were. There were no promises this time, no confessions carved in haste. Just presence. Quiet, steady presence. He'd visit sometimes, not to impress her, but to help. Fixing broken chairs at the art center, delivering supplies, occasionally just sitting with the children as they painted. It startled her, at first, to see him like that, The billionaire who once ruled from glass towers now crouched beside a 5-year-old, teaching him how to draw a sun. One day, as the children left for home, Lily found him standing alone by the window, watching the sky turn shades of rose. "You look happy," she said softly. He turned, smiling faintly. "Maybe I finally am. Not the loud kind of happy, more like the quiet after a long storm." She walked closer. "You found peace?" He shook his head gently. "No, I just stopped fighting it." They stood there in silence, the kind that felt warm, earned. Lily leaned against the window frame. "Do you ever think about what might have been, if things had gone differently?" He smiled, but it was sad and honest. "Sometimes. But then I realized we wouldn't be us now if it had." She nodded. "I guess broken paths still lead home." Michael's gaze softened. "You were my home, Lily. Not the place, the feeling." Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. "Then promise me one thing," she whispered. "If you ever forget who you are, don't look for me. Look for what we learned." He nodded slowly, understanding. That love can be gentle, that forgiveness isn't weakness, and that some goodbyes are blessings in disguise. Lily smiled through her tears. "Exactly." The next morning, he was gone, a quiet departure, no drama, no letter, just a silver raindrop pendant he had once given her, now hanging from her classroom window latch, catching the morning light. She didn't cry. Instead, she touched the pendant and whispered, "Thank you." Because she knew this wasn't loss, it was closure wrapped in grace. Months later, an envelope arrived at the center. Inside was a handwritten note and a small photograph, a construction site by the lake where they'd once walked. At the bottom, his message read, "The Hawthorne Foundation Art Wing, dedicated to healing hearts that forgot how to begin again. You inspired this. Thank you for showing me what kindness builds." Lily held the photo against her chest, smiling through a flood of tears. She could almost hear his voice in the wind, calm, certain, healed. And for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was missing someone. She felt like she was finally standing where she was meant to be. She walked outside, the children's laughter echoing behind her. The sky was heavy with clouds, but the air smelled like promise. Then the first drop of rain fell, cool and pure. She tilted her face upward and let it fall freely. The rain no longer reminded her pain. It reminded her of him, of lessons learned, of love found and released, of healing that didn't need to be perfect to be real. As a drop shimmered down her cheeks, she smiled, whispering into the wind, "Some storms are worth remembering." And somewhere, perhaps miles away, a man stood by a window, looking at that same rain, smiling too, knowing she was okay. Because finally, they both were. If this story found its way to your heart, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, "Not for me, but for the soul who carried their pain and turned it into peace." One click is your way of saying, "I felt you, and I believe in healing."